Hurricane Francine is now inland and moving northward, heading up the Mississippi River, at least for a short time as it weakens, but it's going to bring some heavy rains through a good part of the South. We have our late summer warm weather continuing, and it looks like it'll be rain free for quite a while. So we'll discuss this all in just incredible detail tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast by shopping on Amazon. Just use the referral link at the that's pinned to the top of the chat board or is on the descriptor to this podcast. And it doesn't cost you a thing. Just go in there, use the search bar, do your shopping, and Amazon will throw us back a little bit of their coin, not yours. So we do appreciate your support by shopping our referral link on Amazon. Okay, Mr. Rayo, back from
Yeah.
the poker, back up, yeah, back from the poker game with 10 minutes to spare. I won $10, but it
Well,
was fun.
I hope you had fun with Felix, Oscar, and Murray the cop.
Yeah, I had. This was a night for me to draw. I was drawing pairs all night, you know, and played 5 card draw. I had a pair of aces. I threw out um, 3 cards. Okay. So I got back 3 cards. I got back another ace and 2 kings. So I had aces over kings in a full house. And one of the other guys had a full house, but he couldn't beat me. I, it was a nice little pot by the time it was over with. So I was very happy. Anyway,
Well, I'm
um,
happy that you made out so well.
yes, welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board. And for those of you lurking in the background, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday, usually at 7:35, but tonight, because I was being a degenerate gambler, we have a late start at 8:35 p.m. But we'll be back at our regular time tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, hit the like button. So, Francine almost got to a cat two, just about made it, but now the center is ashore and kind of busy down in the New Orleans area. I'll bring that up right away. You can take a look at a few observations that are going on now. A few places are getting some gusty winds, especially right along the coast. And I've overlaid the radar uh, here. You can see the core is all on land now, and we have Joe at the Homa Terrebonne Airport. 78 is the temperature there. A wind southeast at 52, gusting to 70 miles an hour. In Shell Beach, which is east southeast of New Orleans, they're east at 31, gusting to 40. In New Orleans International Airport, Moisant. It is east northeast at 26, gusting to 33. Looks like there's areas of heavy rain around New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Here's a gust inland at the Louisiana Regional Airport, which is northwest of New Orleans by not a short distance, but a fair distance there. North northeast 35, gusting to 52. So it's all in there, and you can see the radar, by the way, is pretty well covered with rain is pushed up into central Mississippi, even up into portions of northern Louisiana, northwest Louisiana, into Arkansas, and across southern Alabama and the southern half of Georgia. So there's a lot of moisture here that's going to play out over the next couple of days because this is not really going to shoot all the way north. Um, it's only going to get so far, come to a grinding halt and weaken. And Dennis Cassius said it did reach a Cat 2. So I guess maybe they took it to a Cat 2 before it made landfall.
And while all of this was taking place, we had about as nice a weather day as you possibly could have imagined. And we've got, well, actually, a connoisseur of the skies that I am, I did notice earlier today that we did have some veiled or high, thin, wispy cirrus clouds in the sky, which occasionally passed in front and veiled the sun. But aside from that, Joe, couldn't have been a nicer, prettier, better day than what we had out there today. And more of this nice weather is going to be happening through the remainder of the week into the weekend. And the ironic thing is that usually when we have a storm making landfall in the Gulf, we have to start worrying about how this is going to affect us or influence us. More often than not, these storms take a northeast trajectory from the Gulf, or at least the moisture takes a northeast trajectory and ends up, bringing us wet weather, sometimes copious amounts of precipitation. But this is not going to be one of those cases. High pressure is going to sit over us and it's going to flex its muscles and provide us with an ample shield to keep all of that activity away from our area. All that moisture from Francine looks like it's going to be heading north and even northwest from the Gulf. And again, for us, no real weather problems in the foreseeable future.
No, a lot of blocking here with this big ridge that's building, this big upper high that's building over the Great Lakes and eventually moving its way up into upstate New York, southeastern Canada, and New England. I mean, you can see on the loop all the clouds, the northern fringe of the high clouds gets to about Tennessee, and then it just turns almost straight east. So, yeah, you're probably not even going to see, you're not going to see much of anything out of this. If you're from Virginia northward, uh, at least as far as cloud cover is concerned, it'll be, it's just not an issue.
It is. It's not an issue at all. Uh, hopefully, I know you are very well in looking across the entire nations and picking out events that will keep our or hold our interest. We of course still have all that hot weather out in the southwestern states, but and the wet weather down associated with Francine. But other than that, I mean, like if we were to rely solely on the weather here in the Northeast, there really wouldn't be much to talk about, and we'd probably end this show very early.
Well, yes, we have, there is moisture. There's a deep trough that's coming into the western part of the U.S., and that might, I don't know how far south that cooler air is going to get because I know they still, that streak of 100-degree plus days in Phoenix just continues to roll along. I've lost track as to how many days in a row it's been. But there are some showers and thunderstorms up in parts of the Northwest and in the northern Rockies. But the Northeast is quiet. The Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, even back up to the upper Mississippi Valley. It's just a really nice night tonight. And, our weather here is going to be in good shape. Still have hurricane warnings up for southeast Louisiana as well as southern Mississippi, and also for the southernmost part of Alabama, just about to the Florida state line, and those will start to get reduced over time. We've got a lot of red flag warnings out in the west because it's very dry. They've had some fire weather watches up in a few places. Don't see any extreme excessive heat advisories or heat advisories around. It's mostly quiet, of course. There's nothing from the standpoint of watches or warnings in the eastern part of the United States. And Francine, right now, as of the 7 p.m. advisory, uh, Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 29.6 north, 90.9 west, and maximum sustained winds are at 85 miles an hour. Let me see what they list in terms of the geography here. Just give me 1 second. And it's 20 miles east southeast of Morgan City, 55 miles west southwest of New Orleans. They were carrying 85 miles an hour on the 7 o'clock advisory, moving northeast or 045 at 17 miles an hour and a pressure of 978 millibars, 28.88 inches. And you can see it kind of moves almost straight northward, weakening to a remnant depression as it moves up into northwest Mississippi and northeastern Arkansas, and then it just kind of dies there. But there are a couple of other things going on. First off, let's just go back to hang on, let me get back to the main page here. We do have a new tropical depression, and that's way out there at 16.2 north and 30.3 west, moving west northwest at 18. And that is forecast to become a tropical storm tonight or on Thursday. And as we take a look at their forecast here, it's pretty much sort of a slow west northwest movement right until Sunday. And they have it getting to between 45 and 50 degrees west. However, I'm going to just um, I'll bring up the forecast, the model track guidance with this, and we'll take a look. So, I mean, you've got some of them starting to turn it northward. You've got some of the models just taking it west northwest, where it gets to about 20 and 50. I don't know how much you're going to be able to do with that anyway because of what's going on in the Atlantic. If you just take a look at the latest GFS model, for example, it moves it west northwest to about 40 west, and then it starts to move it, northward from there and deepens it to a hurricane. But it's already turning north and moving north northeast to the Azores, and eventually it winds up near Portugal. So that's the GFS. But I would see the European today. Let's take a look at that. And the European has it going west northwest to about 45-ish, between 45 and 50 degrees west before it turns it straight north and turns it north northeast, deepening it to a hurricane and heading towards the Azores. So that looks to be like it's going to be a fifth storm, and it's going to probably and get another name out of the way, which will bring the total to seven named tropical storms. And
This would be uh, Tropical Storm or Hurricane Gordon. Gordon, of course, those of us who go back a long ways, may remember that here in the New York area in the 1960s and 70s, there was a notable broadcast weather forecaster here in New York on CBS, Gordon Barnes. And Gordon
yeah,
Barnes was interesting, Joe, because he never told you what the weather was going to be like the next 2 or 3 days. He seemed to be interested only in events that would take place. He'd give you a list of storms coming up for the upcoming month. I remember Pat Parson and Ben Farnsworth on WCBS News Radio 88 in the afternoon. They'd always look forward to when Gordon Barnes said, like the beginning of the month, he says, "All right, you can expect the following storms on the 3rd, the 7th through the 8th, the 15th to the 16th, the 22nd and 23rd, the 29th and 30th." And Pat and Ben Farnsworth would say Pat has it all down with his crayon. But
right,
anyway,
exactly.
that's Gordon Barnes, and that'll be our next storm, the G storm, coming after Alberto, Beryl, Chris, Debbie, Ernesto, currently Francine, and Gordon next up on deck. And if you're wondering, after Gordon, we will have Joyce. Joyce,
Joyce.
can you
Well,
join?
yeah. There's also Commissioner Gordon, just so you know. We can't forget Commissioner Gordon, Neil Hamilton.
I don't know who he is, but I do know this.
Yes, exactly. We do have the rain on the radar pretty loaded from east to west across the deep south and down to the Gulf Coast. You can see it here on the close-up view. It's actually even some rain, at least aloft, get almost into southern portions of South Carolina. We've got some showers and thunderstorms going on in Florida. It's all elongated east-west. It's just a little bit bizarre because he's sort of got this old frontal boundary that's this it's been sitting out there, it's sitting down south and degenerating, and the hurricane is, part of all of that. It's sort of pushing all of this, very slowly northward, just making, inching along through up central Mississippi and trying to push northward. I sure hope I get into some of this rain because it is bone dry
I mean, you
here.
look at that. You look at that radar, and you say, "Oh my goodness! Look at all of that precipitation. Look at all that wet weather." And you would almost put money down that eventually some of that was going to work its way all the way up into our area, and it's not going to lay a glove on us. None of it. Amazing.
Hmm. Um, I see Miss Fowlerite is interested in Baja California, so let me take a look and see what's going on in the Pacific side. So we'll go to the Eastern Pacific, and there is a broad area of low pressure here, where they've got it as a 70% chance that this could develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm. And we'll see. It should show up. Well, you see it there. It kind of shows up on the lower left. It's offshore and then goes right over the southern tip of Baja sometime Friday night or to Saturday morning. Looks like as a weakening tropical storm. and then it goes on up northward from there into the Gulf of California and just basically disappears. So it doesn't look like this is going to have a whole lot of time to develop into much, not much more than maybe a higher end tropical storm at its peak, and then it goes on and starts to weaken, probably due to the fact that you got that deep trough that's coming down in the west. And in the meantime, you can see the Francine moisture here moving northward. The remnant low gets into Arkansas and dies out, but you've got lower than normal pressures, and the Hurricane Center does highlight this area of low pressure off the southeast coast that's going to develop. It'll probably be. I'm thinking now that this is going to be separate. They're not going to be. It's not going to be Francine's remnants here because you got it's coming more out of the frontal boundary and then not from the actual core. The identifiable core, if the GFS is right, just disappears. So this will be a new system. It probably will be non-tropical at first. Now the prior runs were doing something with this where it develops a low and then it takes it in somewhere into coastal South Carolina, somewhere between Charleston and Wilmington, and then on the at least on the 12Z, it moved it all northwestward into Tennessee, gets rain by late Tuesday or Wednesday into Delmarva in Virginia, but it never gets further north than that. It just sort of sits there for the rest of next week. And then, of course, you've got the new 18Z run, which is the new 18Z run, which doesn't really do that. It actually does pin a low back westward, but it doesn't really develop it very much. It takes it inland, and then it tries to form something out further to the east. But either way, I mean, if you look at this and you look at the European, we can switch over to the European. Uh, the models do not bring that rain up the coast, even if it does develop to something.
Yeah, yeah. So it looks like basically the same story, basically, for the coming, at least for the next week or so, just dry weather. Nothing more to say.
Okay, WPC, we have a tornado watch up in southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi, and no surprise that we're seeing the possibility of a few spin up tornadoes. And in fact, they've got on a mesoscale discussion here. The tornado threat continues, even extends into southern Alabama. And you see the area they've highlighted to the east of where the hurricane is. You got the hurricane symbol there between Morgan City and Homa. And they've outlined where talking about severe weather here. And they just say, just trying to get to the point of this. Um, it's all the technical stuff that they write. The bottom line is they could support the last line says that could support the potential for a few tornadoes this evening. So you have that. And we also have a marginal risk for severe weather from southeastern Oregon, northeastward through Montana into the western Dakotas. Nothing anywhere else. Tomorrow, slight risk and elevated tornado risk of 2 to 5% in Alabama, western Georgia, down to the Florida Panhandle. And you see it here with slight risk pushes up almost into northern Alabama and covers just most of the Florida Panhandle into southwest Georgia. We also have a marginal to slight risk up in Montana and northern Wyoming and the western Dakotas. Rest of the country is quiet. And then day three, we've got a marginal risk eastern Alabama, much of Georgia, almost to me, down to the Florida Panhandle again. So with all this, all that's where all the tropical moisture is. They also, by the way, have general thunderstorms for northeastern New York, Vermont, northern Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine for Friday into Saturday. So let's see what that's about. And there's a little upper trough that's coming down on Friday in eastern Canada. The GFN, the European doesn't do much with it. Just it actually does form some some showers and maybe a couple of thunderstorms in the mix there over Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. But nothing further south than that, and I don't think we have really much to worry about from that.
No, it does not look like all that big a deal, except if you happen to be living in Vermont, New Hampshire, or Maine, then you have to watch the skies carefully, and probably a lot of that is diurnal, which means that whatever you get will pop up most likely in the afternoon and early evening. Sometime, let's say between 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock at night.
All right, rainfall. Now, this might be because this goes through next Wednesday night. So they actually, WPC,
That's
and
interesting. I didn't look
from
at this.
yeah, from earlier guidance, Joe, earlier guidance was trying to bring that rain area with the low in the southeast coast, bringing it inland, taking the low center toward the Appalachians, but lifting that moisture into the onshore flow that's going to develop. So, yeah, they've got a half inch almost to New York City, and they got a half to three quarters across central and South Jersey, and they got a quarter of an inch a little bit further to the north. But I don't know how much, it's going to be tough. You've got this big blocking high. There's no guarantee that this any of this is going to be able to slide that far north. It could all just wind up getting, if that high is stronger to the north, uh, that could just all be suppressed. And by the way, we are talking a week from now,
Right,
because
right.
this is toward the end of the forecast period.
Backloaded.
Back end loaded. For Mississippi, southeast Louisiana, much of central and northern Alabama, central and western Tennessee, with the center tracking right, basically just following the Mississippi River or just to the west of the Mississippi River and weakening as it goes northward. So that should answer somebody's question here that was asking me about this going to Memphis. The actual low center might get somewhere near Memphis, but it's not going to, that's not really the thing to focus on. It's more to take a look at all this rain. They do have several inches of rain and some areas of 5 and 6 inches pushing up into Tennessee and northern Alabama, down through much of the eastern half of Mississippi. And then, of course, it's already going on in southeast Louisiana and southern Mississippi. So that's all part of Francine. And then they also, from the, whatever develops off the southeast coast, there's that dark brown is 7 to 10. They've got 7 to 10 inches pushing right into coastal North Carolina between Hatteras and the South Carolina state line. So, this might be one area to watch to see, what actually comes of all of this, because it could be a big wet, um, it could be a very wet system for the southeast.
And Tom Contino was asking Joe, "Are you in a drought?" Now, I did look at the CPC drought map, which actually is now about a week old. They're going to update it tomorrow, but they had Georgia, most of Georgia, in yellow, which means not drought, but exceedingly dry. For the state that's right next door to you, Alabama, they do have the stage one drought. So it is it's been dry down your way, but from that you just showed us on that map, uh, that may be well, maybe put behind you, considering all the wet weather that WPC is suggesting you're going to get.
Right, and this is the dry season here, by the way. Starts in September and lasts into November, where it does. I can remember from last fall, I think it rained on 2 days in 2.5 months, from September to early November. And the weather down here in the fall is usually, um, great weather most of the time. And I can attest to that. That's been the case. Today we had a lot of high clouds, but we did have some sunshine in the mix too. So, I mean, overall, it was a pretty nice day.
Okay, well that's good.
Yes. And we're looking also, by the way, at some heavy precip amounts in central and northern Idaho and across into Montana of an inch and a half to maybe some areas getting as much as 2.5 inches, three-quarters of an inch to an inch and a half over the next 7 days in the Pacific Northwest, and moving down into northern California, also into parts of southern Oregon, southern Idaho, northern Nevada, and northern Utah. Also, some of that tropical moisture is going to zoom up into Arizona, so we have an area of half to three-quarters of an inch and a few little dots of an inch and a quarter being indicated over the next 7 days. But that might actually help to cool things down because it is covering a good portion of the southern half of the state. So maybe that's what keeps, if you get into enough clouds and showers in there, that maybe keeps um, breaks that streak in Phoenix.
Yes, that would be nice. And as of course, Phoenix, as we have noted from time to time, setting an all-time record, consecutive triple-digit days. The second consecutive summer where they have had to deal with incredibly hot weather I mean, even for Arizona. So yeah, that would be nice to break that string with some much-needed moisture.
Let's take a look at what the upper air is doing. Okay.
I,
So
I
we
know. I mean, I'm looking at the I'm looking at the chat board, and it doesn't seem like anybody's talking about weather. I mean, I see Miss Spallowright talking about hot pants and clothes that set women free, and Tom Contino is talking about love lingerie on women. I wonder, are you guys listening to us?
well, their conversation is more interesting than ours.
It seems that way.
Yes. Um, anyway, it's looking going forward. You see this upper high just kind of builds into the northeast. You got lower pressures in the southeast, the Tennessee Valley, the Gulf states, and off the southeast coast. Deep trough coming down in the west. That upper low dives all the way down into Northern California and Nevada. So that might help the cause to finally cool it off down there in the southwestern part of the U.S. Mostly ridging in the east. There's a deep low east of Newfoundland that is sitting out there. And eventually, over time, as we get past, say, going into maybe the last week of the month, we get into some more serious troughing here in the eastern part of the United States. So um, that might break this long dry spell that we're going to be in. But it's going to be at least we're talking 12 days, 11 or 12 days from now where it starts to get underway. Kind of blocky up there in uh, Labrador and Greenland. That's probably going to force some lower pressures to the south of that. It's kind of interesting to see that right now. By the way, Judah Cohen saying that the polar vortex, which is supposed to, now this is the time of year where it starts to, strengthen up in the stratosphere, is about as weak as he's ever seen it in September. But what that means down the road remains to be seen. But
That'll
we'll
be. I mean, that's interesting. I don't usually keep track. He obviously must have a mental encyclopedia of past years, kind of like an analog of what has happened in previous years. So if he's saying it's as weak as he's ever seen it, this deep into the summer or the beginnings of the fall season, yeah, what does that mean? What is it? What
Well, you
is?
know what, and I don't mean this at all in an insulting way. If anything, it's the exact opposite. I mean this in a highly complimentary way because he tweeted about this, and folks were asking him questions about why this is. Is it the Tonga volcano? We seem to always be coming back to that and talking about all this weird stuff that's been happening, on and off for the last year, since that volcano erupted in the Pacific. And he was just straight honest. And this goes to what we were talking about last week too, about the fact that there is so much we don't know.
Yep. Well, I agree. There's sometimes we think we know everything, and then nature throws us a curveball, and just you really don't know what's going to be happening down the road. We're still in that learning stage, Joe. We're still, like the baseball broadcasters. They say, "Well, I've been watching the game for 41 years. I never saw a play like that before." Sometimes even us, we see a weather pattern that we scratch our heads. We say, like, what the heck was that all about? So this is something with the Tonga volcano. I heard, I read papers saying this was going to affect us for the next 6 to 8 years. Now I just recently read something that said, well, it's affected us for 2 years now. Its effects are going to fade away very quickly. Do we really know?
Do we
I don't know.
really know? I don't know. Why is the Atlantic hurricane season behaving the way it is, considering everybody was on all on the same side of the seesaw, saying that we were going to have, you know, virtually a near record breaking year, and we're not at that on that pace. To do the math. I mean, if we get all right, so let's say this this Cabo Verde depression becomes a tropical storm, so that'll give us storm number 7. Let's say that the system off the southeast coast maybe develops into a tropical storm. That gives us storm number 8. So that would put us to 8. Okay. Um, Not only that's 8, they got to get to 17, which means, and we're almost to the middle of September. So are we going to have? I mean, could we have 9 named storms from mid-September to the end of November? Sure, but every day that goes by, that window gets a little, starts to get that opening in that window starts to get smaller and smaller.
A couple of days ago, I said, I gave my number. I said 15. I said, I don't think we're going to go any higher than 15 names. So that's my projection. And of course, the forecasts, which were even updated in August, still saying something like what, 17 to 24? Highly doubt we're going to get to 24. 17 is going to be, I think, a real push. So we'll see what happens. By the way, Joe, I just forwarded to you on your Facebook Messenger the link. Maybe you want to put it on the chat board for the tri-state area weather conference that is coming up. It'll be a week from this coming Saturday at WestCon, Western Connecticut University. So if you're into weather, they've got a fine lineup of speakers that will be there, and yours truly is going to be the MC. So if you want to get a chance to see me in the flesh, there you go. The Westchester Weather Conference, which is, again, September 21st, 1 week from this Saturday.
All right.
Rayo saying, we will be there. You'll be able to meet the lovely Mrs. Rayo. The executive producer, indeed, will be there as well. I need her. Without her as my navigator, I don't know where the heck or how the heck I'm going to get up there. So
You don't know how to get to WestCon?
I've been to Western Connecticut University. Actually, I was at the very first, and here it is to prove to all of you. I was at the very first weather conference in 2006, and in fact, I was even one of the speakers at that particular conference. But that's the only time I've ever been there, and I've been to that area. The mall is up there, and we go up there several times a year. But I've only been to West. Tom Contino doesn't own a GPS. Yeah, but Tom, you don't understand. Well, you're not married. You're not married. If you were married, you wouldn't need a GPS. Or even if I do have a GPS, but the GPS tells me one thing, and Renata, who's sitting right next to me, says, "Don't listen to her."
Well, I was going to
I know
say
the better way to go.
that you need the passive aggressive GPS, which says you're turning here. I would have gone straight.
This is the honest to goodness truth. She uses. We have one of these Garmin GPSs in the car, but when we go somewhere, she sticks the cell phone into the into the what used to be the lighter
Right.
uh, to give that power. And sometimes we'll have these two machines at odds with each other.
Yeah, I drove once with my. I bless you. I drove once with my brother who had both. I forgot where we were going, but he had both GPSs going at the same time, and I'm like, oh, maybe we were coming back from New Hampshire. I don't remember. Whatever they were literally yelling at each other.
It's almost not yelling at each other, but here I am, I'm driving, and the Garmin is telling me to go one way, the Google Maps is telling me to go the other way, and this is the honest to God truth. At times I will pull over and turn to my lovely wife and say, "All right, who am I going to listen to?" And she'll sit there and she'll say, I think we ought to take the Google, or I think we ought to go with the Garmin because the Google is going to take, you know, it's more.
Turn, take exit ramp, turn right, then drive off cliff on left.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yes. Oh God. Yeah, I just use Google Maps. That's just seems to be the easiest one for me
And I talked to
when I need to.
and I talked to one of actually both of the guys who are running this conference. I did a Zoom conference with them this afternoon, and one of them said, "Now you have to remember, you have to get there early because if you don't get there early, there are special spots around the back of the school on Ninth Street. They're limited number of parking spaces, but if you get them, all you have to do is just get it and just walk around the school and you're in. If you don't get there early, those parking spaces are going to be gone, and then you have to park on the spaces which is on South Street, and that's going to take you a 15-minute walk to get from there to the school." And I'm saying, like, oofa, do I have to deal with any of this? I almost felt at one point I said, you know what? Find somebody else to MC this.
Well, the one thing that's happened,
What did I get myself into here?
one of the frustrating things for me, especially now that I've pushed into my mid 60s, I always had the ability. In fact, my best friend from high school used to be amazed. I could go somewhere that I've never been to and find my way with ease to get to to get to wherever it was that I was where I was going. And once I had been to a place, it was like in my memory, so that if I went somewhere and then I didn't go there again for say 5 years, I know exactly what roads to take, what exits to take, and so on. Now, you know, sometimes when I'm driving home from, just driving home from Walmart, I'm like, where am I going? Do I turn here? You know, it's I've lost that ability, and it was something that I really was proud of, but I don't seem to be able to do it anymore. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that we're so dependent on on these mobile devices,
Yep.
these computers that we take along in our pockets that um you know I used to be able to remember everybody's address, everybody's phone number. I could meet somebody and then not see them for 10 years. They could tell me the phone number. I never had to write it down. It was always in my head. I can't do that anymore. I don't even remember my kids' phone numbers because I think, when you've got a device that's doing it for you, your brain has decided, okay, you really don't need the space in my head, in your head to remember this stuff. So I'm going to, brain's going to go do something else. It's very frustrating.
Down here in the basement, in a closet somewhere back on the other side of the house, there's a closet, and in that closet, there's a corrugated cardboard box. And in that corrugated cardboard box, there's about, I would have to say, minimum 20 or 25 like Rand McNally maps, books, and guides for the entire United States, for New England, for Vermont, for Connecticut, for New York, or whatever. I haven't touched those in years. They're gathering dust. We just sort of take them and toss them into the garbage. I mean, you're absolutely right. We've become so dependent on these little machines that we stick to our windshield or we attach to the, you know, dashboard. That tells us how to go, where to go. We don't even look at maps anymore. We
No,
just listen to these things.
yeah.
Anyway,
All right, you know what? Let's wrap it up, and we'll because I'm tired. We're gonna hold save for Briller Jeopardy for tomorrow. So we'll do it then. Because quite frankly, it's past my bedtime. It's 9 o'clock.
and
I have.
I have to get to bed early because Julian is coming tomorrow.
Oh, yay!
We've worked out a deal with our son and daughter-in-law and his in-laws where we take turns during the week in looking after the baby, and tomorrow morning is our turn, and that means we have to get up at 6 a.m. because Joseph comes and drops the booby off at 6:30, and then we've got him for 8 hours or so. So that
Oh,
keeps it.
yeah, I'm going to see the grandkids on Saturday, so I'm going down to my grandson's soccer game. So,
Yep.
um, Yeah, it's the best. It's wonderful. I don't know how what else to explain it. Though anybody on the chat board that's a grandparent knows exactly what I'm talking about.
And
Uh,
did you ever think, Joe? I mean, we've known each other for a good long time, going back to our college. Did you ever think that one day we'd be sitting here doing our own television show on the internet and chatting about being grandparents and what it's like
yeah,
being
because
grand?
working in real television, we'd never be able to do it because there'd be somebody telling you shouldn't be talking about that sort of stuff, and actually, you probably don't want to, but
Right.
um, yeah, because it's our show, we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
And right now, I want to go to bed because
Okay.
JJ's already asleep. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35. So back to normal. We'll see you tomorrow. Night, night.
Good night, folks.